My great love for Jesus led me to Islam Part 1. Introduction. As a Catholic, I was led to believe that Catholicism was the only true religion, and that Judaism was only a preparation for Christianity. Hence the other religions were utterly false. In fact, I only heard about Islam for the first time in 1978. I had learned that Muslims believed in the divine origin of Christianity and Judaism. The Quran indicates that Allah, the proper name for God in the Arabic language, had sent prophets to every land in order to guide people to the path of truth and righteousness. In order to carve the Christian message into the depths of my subconscious, the Catholic Church designed a program which, when applied from childhood, had a very high probability of retention. This program affected people's beliefs and their behavior for the rest of their lives. In this scheme, the central figure is Jesus, and the rites are mostly related to events surrounding his birth, supposed death and resurrection. From his birth, assumed to be in December, to his alleged crucifixion on Easter. These religious rites were introduced by human beings many centuries after Jesus' departure rather than by divine revelation. According to tradition in Venezuela, at midnight on December 24th used to wait for the arrival of Jesus to bring the gifts that I had requested in my yearly wish letter, being from a poor family, and having several brothers and sisters, I understood that it was very difficult for child Jesus to bring me what I had asked for. But I was often confused and puzzled because if Jesus had performed so many miracles as I had learned from nuns and priests, why was he not able to bring me a tricycle, or a seat that request easier for him than bringing dead people back to life? Thus, for several years, the concept of child Jesus left me disappointed. As Easter was approaching, I used to watch televised stories of how Jesus was abused until he was hung on a cross to be crucified. I really wanted to climb inside the TV set and help him somehow. I asked God to help him, and asked him not to let his son be crucified. In the end, I would hide and cry because I was taught that men do not cry. I could not understand why such brutality was inflicted on such a good man. As a child, this incident cultivated in me an intense love for this great prophet of God. As for other children, perhaps the toys they received on Christmas, as an answer to their wish letters, was the cause of their affection towards Jesus. If the objective of the church was to somehow infuse a feeling of reverence for Jesus, in my case they were successful. I learned to love Jesus more than my own parents. However, while still a child, I started to question the power of God. The concept that I had about God was that he could do whatever he wanted. He had created the universe, the earth, the sun, the moon, the stars, and human beings wondered why he could not save Jesus from being crucified on the cross. In order to resolve this dilemma, on one occasion I climbed a small wall in the backyard of my house and challenged God, saying, "If you are really so powerful, and can do whatever you like, then make me fly when I jump from this wall. Otherwise, I will not believe that you are so powerful, because you could not save Jesus from the cross either." Fortunately, the wall was not so high and I fell to the ground. With every attempt to fly I became more and more convinced that God was not so powerful after all. A childish analysis indeed. Later on in life when I started high school, my parents allowed me to work with an old man who was a photographer and I accompanied him to many places. It turned out that he was also a very famous fortune teller. Wherever we went, many of his female clients would ask him about events that would happen in their future. For this task, he used to smoke brown tobacco, and as it was being consumed and the ashes fell, he would reveal information to his clients. I also learned that he used to hypnotize people in order to learn hidden things about their lives and would then respond to their queries. All of these experiences were stored in my subconscious at a very early age. During this period, my parents were attending a center that specialized in parapsychology. I accompanied them several times to see what was happening, and it was in this center that I learned about the concepts of meditation, spirits, possession, and what I thought was dead people speaking to the living. In reality, the dead do not talk to the living, rather, devils imitate the voices of the dead and communicate through the living. On the other hand, Quran recitation and prophetic supplications are effective in ridding people of all evil spirits. The fact that any Muslim can perform such acts is clear proof of the miraculous nature of the Quran. As for those who supplicate to other than Allah or use the Bible to rid others of possession by devils, it is no more than a cooperation with those evil spirits or using other evil spirits to get rid of other ones. Here I learned to pray twice daily at a small altar that my father had built with great care and dedication. At one of the gatherings I attended, the leader of the session prepared a talisman for me, which he said would protect me, so I took it with MC wherever I went. Meanwhile, I continued to think about the crucifixion of Jesus. At the time, my father had a book that he read frequently. It was entitled A Life of Jesus Dictated by Himself. He once told me that according to this book, Jesus had traveled to places away from Jerusalem, which made me a little optimistic about finding an answer to my question regarding his crucifixion. When I graduated from high school, I was granted a scholarship to study engineering in the USA, which I happily accepted. However, before traveling in 1977, I had a bad experience that affected my belief in Christianity. I saw two Christians help a man who had suffered from an epileptic attack on the street. But afterwards, they searched his wallet and stole some of his money. Some biblical texts clearly forbid stealing and other acts of evil, as in the Ten Commandments. And God spake all these words, saying, I am the Lord thy God, thou shalt have no other gods before me, thou shalt not make unto thee any graven image, or any likeness of anything that is in heaven above, thou shalt not bow down thyself to them, nor serve them. For I the Lord thy God. Thou shalt not take the name of the Lord thy God in vain, honour thy father and thy mother, thou shalt not kill. Thou shalt not commit adultery. Thou shalt not steal. Thou shalt not bear false witness against thy neighbour. Thou shalt not covet thy neighbour's house, thou shalt not covet thy neighbour's wife, nor anything that is thy neighbour's. Exodus 20. 1-17, these texts are considered to be a section of the Bible that is in line with the Quran, only that their impact on people's lives has almost vanished due to the existence of other texts in the Bible that allow their violation. Out of mercy to humankind, God revealed the Quran as a criterion over its predecessors. In spite of the fact that individual acts cannot by any means be considered indicative of the validity or invalidity of a religion, this incident greatly affected me. Perhaps to many people this event might seem insignificant. But I had witnessed my father punish my brother severely when he brought home the equivalent of 25 cents and could not provide him with a satisfactory explanation as to where he got it from. 2. My experience in the United States of America. In 1977, I arrived in the United States of America to begin studies at one of the universities. First, I had to go to a school to learn English, and there I met many people of different beliefs from various parts of the world. In Seattle, Washington, at the English language school, I had a roommate from Saudi Arabia who was working on his master's degree and whose name was Fuad. One day, he asked me if it was all right for him to pray in the room. I told him that I did not have a problem with it. I was surprised, since it was the first time I saw a Muslim perform his prayers. Before starting to pray, he performed ablution. He washed his hands, rinsed his mouth, and washed his face and arms in the small sink in our room. Islam assigns great importance to the issue of cleanliness. For example, the cleanliness of the dress, body, and place in addition to making ablution a requirement for the validity of performing formal prayer. Ablution is also recommended before recitation of the Quran, and going to bed. Washing the entire body is an obligation after sexual intercourse and is a commendable act before the attending of the congregational Friday prayer. Other acts, such as washing the mouth, brushing teeth, trimming nails, removing the pubic and armpit hair, trimming the moustache, using perfume, tidying up living places, removing harmful objects from the way of others, abstaining from polluting public places and allilities, keeping shady places clean, etc. are all acts encouraged and enjoined by Islam. These are also acts that bring one nearer to God, and for which one is rewarded by Him. No other religion comes anywhere near Islam as far as cleanliness of the body and soul is concerned. It was the first time I had seen someone wash his feet in a sink meant for washing hands. Then I observed the movements of his prayers. He stood up, bowed, knelt down, and prostrated. At that point I remembered how we used to pray in the church by only kneeling down, and what Fuad did was different. A short time later he left the institute, and for several months, I did not see another Muslim pray. During break time at the English Institute, foreign students from various countries used to meet and discuss a variety of topics. I clearly remember that on one occasion, as we were discussing the origin of religions and prayers, I told them, "You pray the way you do because that is the way your ancestors used to do." I went on to tell them that their ancestors used to worship the sun, the moon and the stars, and since then, that tradition has been transmitted through all the generations up to the present. I had even started to have doubts about the origin of belief in God. However, due to my deep Christian roots, I did not become an atheist. One day I went to visit a mosque and I observed many people praying the same way that I had seen Fuad pray previously. After the prayer, they all remained seated on the floor, which was very cold, to listen to a sermon. Since the rest of the people were sitting, I joined them and listened to all that the Imam had to say. His name was Jamil Abdul Razak from Iraq, and he was giving a talk in English about backbiting. I remember that his voice was high-pitched and emotional. As he spoke, he looked around the audience as if somebody had spoken ill of someone else. But he did not point out anyone specifically. I think his objective was to instill a feeling of guilt in those involved in backbiting. That same day, someone sent me an envelope with some booklets comparing Islam and Christianity. They took me a long time to read, as I was then busy starting as a freshman at Oklahoma State University. It was through the comparative booklets that I learned that Islam and the message of Jesus were both revelations from God. Jesus said that the message he was conveying was not his but God's. For I have not spoken on my own, but the Father who sent me has himself given me a commandment about what to say and what to speak. John 12:49. Likewise, the revelation that Prophet Muhammad conveyed to the rest of humanity was sent by God through Angel Gabriel, and indeed, the Quran is the revelation of the Lord of the worlds. The trustworthy Spirit, i.e., Gabriel, has brought it down upon your heart, O Muhammad, that you may be of the warners. Core apostrophe in 26:192-194. Therefore, the truth of every religion and the proof of its divine origin depends fundamentally on the accuracy with which the original revelation from God was preserved and transmitted to the rest of humankind. The level of deviation and uncertainty depends on the degree of precision with which every word revealed to the prophets was transmitted to others. If these words have not been accurately transmitted and have instead suffered adulteration, it is highly likely that the essence of the original message would be lost forever. Consequently, in order to make a just and unbiased comparison between Christianity and Islam, it is necessary to determine the extent to which the original
It is necessary
to determine the extent to which the original Gospels and the Quran have been kept free from adulterations, additions or deletions. What follows in this book is a brief comparison between Christianity and Islam, the two most influential religions in the world with the highest number of followers from all races and nations, and the two most closely associated faiths. I hope that by the will of God this book will assist the seeker of truth in his or her search for the true religion. (3) The Gospels. The four well-known Gospels of Matthew, Mark, Luke and John are found in the New Testament section of the Bible. They were written between 70 CE and 115 CE, decades after Jesus had departed, and were supposedly based on documents that have since been lost. The Gospel according to Mark was the first one written in the Greek language in Rome, at least 40 years after Jesus' departure. The Gospel according to Matthew was written in Greek about 90 CE. The Gospel according to Luke was written in Greek approximately 80 CE. These three Gospels are called synoptic because they are supposed to have originated from the same lost documents. The Gospel according to John. This John is not one of Jesus' disciples. According to Encyclopedia Britannica, which was co-written by 500 Christian scholars, the Gospel according to John is definitely and undoubtedly a fabrication. On the other hand, is profoundly different from the Synoptic Gospels. It is in this Gospel that the divinity and pre-existence of Jesus was expressed, even though Jesus never confirmed this in the statements attributed to himself. This Gospel was written between 110 and 115 CE. The Gospels were composed after the first followers of Jesus had been divided into several sects. It can be confirmed that they were written in order to reflect the conception of the practical needs of the community. Although traditional sources were utilized to write them down, the writers did not exercise great care to keep the original content free from additions, deletions and other forms of corruption, as the content was meant to serve the writers' personal interests. This fact was confirmed by Christian authorities after the Quran had stated it more than 14 centuries ago. According to Encyclopedia Britannica, important intentional changes, such as the insertion and addition of whole paragraphs took place, v. 2, pages 519 to 521. In the introduction to the Catholic Bible p13, it is stated that the copyists had clearly inserted things over the centuries that were not part of the scriptures. And as a result of that, the text that we have now has reached us pregnant with all kinds of corruption, which is manifest in all copies. Also, in preface to the King James Version, produced by 32 Christian scholars backed up by 50 consultative bodies, we read, "Yet, the King James Version has grave defects, and these defects are so many and so serious." It is worth mentioning that these four Gospels were not the only documents written in the centuries following the departure of Jesus. There were many others such as the Gospels of Jacob, Peter, Thomas, Philip, and Barnabas. If we consider that the Gospel according to the Hebrews, for example, it was a document written in Aramaic, the same language spoken by Jesus. It was utilized by the Nazarenes who negated the divinity of Jesus and considered him no more than a great prophet. In the 4th century CE, the Gospels according to Mark, Matthew, Luke and John were included in the body of the main biblical text, and the Church declared the remaining existent documents to be heretical. However, additional changes continue to be made in the CSE Gospels even though they had already been declared to be the Word of God, and as years passed by, The same Gospels appeared with different texts from their predecessors, which is undisputed evidence of the kind of corruption affecting these books. Among the many factors to be considered when analyzing the veracity of the four canonized Gospels and the authenticity of the messages that came along with them, are the following. 1. The original Gospel as was revealed to Jesus and is mentioned in the Quran as well as in the contemporary Gospels, does not exist today. God said about Jesus, "And we gave him the Gospel, in which was guidance and light." Quran 5:46. Verily I say unto you, wheresoever this Gospel shall be preached throughout the whole world, this also that she hath done shall be spoken of for a memorial of her. Mark 14:9 and Matthew 26:13. And whoever wants to learn about the original concepts of Jesus' teachings should read the Quran. 2. The first records about the sayings of Jesus which were made shortly following his ascension to heaven have been lost. 3. The Gospels were written between 70 and 115 CE, decades after Jesus' departure, and were based on lost documents. As a consequence, Fiqh was a loose manipulation of the content. 4. None of the Gospels' authors saw Jesus or heard him speak. Hence, they were not eyewitnesses. 5. The Gospels were written in the Greek language while Jesus spoke Aramaic. 6. The present Gospels and most of THC epistles were not chosen and validated until the 4th century CE, when a resolution by a minority of the Council of Nicaea was enforced in 325 CE. Before this date the Gospels did not have any canonical authority, and were changed by the writers of different sects in order to comply with their personal interests and desires. Up to the present day the practice of tampering with the text is still prevalent. 7. The vast majority of the New Testament is composed of the writings of Paul and his students. Paul, who never saw or heard Jesus speak, was initially one of the most prominent enemies of Jesus' ministry. He killed many followers of the Messiah and imprisoned them, Acts 8:3-9-1-2. He afterwards forced them to confess to lies against Jesus, Acts 26:11. But when Saul, later called Paul, supposedly converted, he essayed to join himself to the disciples, but they were all afraid of him, and believed not that he was a disciple. But Barnabas took him, and brought him to the apostles, Acts 9:26-27. This event occurred after Paul claimed that Jesus appeared to him and spoke to him on the way to Damascus. He bore witness for himself without presenting any evidence establishing the truth of his claim, Acts 9:3-8. There was no eyewitness to support Paul's claim except for himself. Such testimony for one's self is rejected according to the Bible itself. John 5:31 states, "If I bear witness of myself, my witness is not true." Added to this is the fact that there are several other contradictions in the narrative. For example, in Acts 9:7 and the men which journeyed with him stood speechless, hearing a voice, but seeing no man, while in Acts 22:9, we read, "But they heard not the voice of him that spoke to me." With this claim, Paul managed to achieve what he could not achieve by force. Surprisingly, he suddenly became the chief spokesman in the name of Jesus, claiming that he was appointed by Jesus to preach to the world, Acts 9:3-6. According to 1 John 4:1, "Beloved, believe not every spirit, but try the spirits whether they are of God. Because many false prophets are gone out into the world." Paul himself confessed to Ian in his preaching, "For if the truth of God hath more abounded through my lie unto his glory, why yet am I also judged as a sinner?" Romans 3:7. Paul also accused those who believed not that he was a disciple of erring concerning the faith, 1 Timothy 6:20-21. He described Barnabas, who had been good to him, as carried away with their dissimulation, Galatians 2:13. Paul even gave himself the right to propagate teachings that were contradictory to those taught by Jesus Christ and went against the law which Jesus came to fulfill, Acts 21:20 and Romans 7:6. "Think not that I am come to destroy the law, or the prophets. I am not come to destroy, but to fulfill. For verily I say unto you, till heaven and earth pass, one jot or one tittle shall in no wise pass from the law, till all be fulfilled." Matthew 5:17-18. Paul sought to gather round himself as many followers as possible, even if his means to do so happened to go against the teachings of Christ or his ways of propagation. In 1 Corinthians 9:19-23, Paul confesses to horrendous acts of cheating and deceit to achieve his purposes. He says, 19, "For though I be free from all men, yet have I made myself servant unto all, that I might gain them more." 20. "And unto the Jews I became as a Jew, that I might gain the Jews, to them that are under the law, as under the law, that I might gain them that are under the law." 21. "To them that are without law, as without law, being not without law to God, but under the law to Christ, that I might gain them that are without law." 22. "To the weak became I as weak, that I might gain the weak. I am made all things to all men that I might by all means save some." 23. "And this I do for the gospel's sake, that I might be partaker thereof with you." Thus, we find, when Paul would have entered in unto the people, the disciples suffered him not, Acts 19:30. He also declared that, all they which are in Asia be turned away from me, 2 Timothy 1:15, and no man stood with me, but all men forsook me, 2 Timothy 4:16. 8. The oldest biblical manuscripts we have access to are Codexes Vaticanus, Sinaiticus, and Alexandrinus. All dating back to between the 4th and 5th centuries AD. The extent of alteration the Gospels were subjected to prior to these dates can hardly be determined. Considering that the language of the Gospels was Greek while Jesus spoke Aramaic. 9. There are many discrepancies in several places between the 4th and 5th century manuscripts. Some biblical scholars point to the existence of thousands of manuscripts from THC Gospels, but what is the true value of THC manuscripts if amongst the thousands we cannot find two that are alike? According to the International Translation of the New Testament, all the versions of the New Testament that reached us were not similar. 10. The Gospels, seen as a whole, together with the epistles, contain many errors and contradictions. The numerous errors contained in the Bible led Robert Cale Zeller to say in his The Authenticity of the Holy Bible that no other book ever suffered as many changes, errors and corruptions as the Holy Bible. This is in clear contrast to William Moore's and Laura Vaglieri's slayment about the Quran, see footnote 2, page 21 and footnote 1, page 22. There is also great uncertainty among biblical scholars as to who the authors of the Gospels actually were. These facts are mentioned here as evidence that the Gospel of Jesus as revealed by God has not reached us in its original form. In this way, it can be affirmed that the 4 Gospels included in today's Bible and the epistles that accompany them cannot be considered similar or equivalent to the Gospel revealed to Jesus. As proof of this assertion, the following information is presented. The New Testament, on which modern Christian doctrines rest, has undergone radical changes, and almost every new edition differs from the others. Some of the changes that are now being implemented are so fundamental that they strike at the very foundation of Christianity. For example, the only 2 references to the ascension of Jesus that were found in the Gospels of Mark and Luke have now been deleted from the Revised Standard Edition, RSV, 1952. These passages contained evidence cited to support Jesus' ascension as follows. So then after the Lord had spoken to them, he was received up into heaven, and sat on the right hand of God. Mark 16:19. And it came to pass, while he blessed them, he was parted from them, and carried up to heaven. Luke 24:51. The aforementioned verse from Mark 16:19 has been removed along with a number of other verses that immediately preceded and succeeded it. As for Luke 24:51, the words, carried up to heaven were removed. In Matthew 16:27-28, we read, For the Son of Man shall come in the glory of his Father with his angels, and then he shall reward every man according to his works. Verily I say unto you, there be some standing here, which shall not taste of death, till they see the Son of Man coming in his kingdom. As this prophecy never came true, it can only be concluded that it was a fabrication, a serie-bed of Jesus Christ, who was a true prophet of God and whose prophecy cannot be mistaken. The Gospel of Matthew contradicts itself on the same page when talking about Peter. While Jesus says of him, And Jesus answered and said unto him, Blessed art thou, Simon Bar-Jonah. For flesh and blood hath not revealed it unto thee, that thou art Peter, and I will give unto thee the keys of the kingdom of heaven. And whatsoever thou shalt bind on earth shall be bound in heaven, and whatsoever thou shalt loose on earth shall be loosed in heaven. Matthew 16:17-19. Matthew 16:23 stands in total contrast to all this as it states, But he, Jesus, turned, and said unto Peter, Get thee behind me, Satan, thou art an offence unto me. For thou savourest not the things that be of God, but those that be of men. During the alleged crucifixion events, Matthew 27:44 says, The thieves also, which were crucified with him, cast the same in his teeth. Here the 2 thieves are mentioned as acting together. However, Luke 23:39-40 states, And one of the malefactors which were hanged railed on him, saying, If thou be Christ, save thyself and us. But the other answering rebuked him, saying, Dost not thou fear God, seeing thou art in the same condemnation? In the latter example, the 2 thieves are not acting together. Rather they are in opposition to each other. There are too many other contradictions in the Bible to record here. The changes, alterations and contradictions are not found only in the New Testament but also in the Old Testament. Vatican Ecumenical Council II, 1962-65 admitted to the existence of errors in the Old Testament, now the books of the Old Testament. In accordance with the state of mankind before the time of salvation established by Christ. Reveal to all men the knowledge of God and of men and the ways in which God, just and merciful, deals with men. These books, though they also contain some things which are incomplete and temporary, in Providentissimus Deus on the study of Holy Scripture issued by Pope Leo XIII on 18th of November 1893, it is stated, 'Tis true, no doubt, that copyists have made mistakes in the text of the Bible, and confession is the master of evidence. For example, in 2 Kings 8:26, we are told, 22 years old was Ahaziah when he began to reign. This contradicts 2 Chronicles 22:2 which states, 42 years old was Ahaziah when he began to reign. Another contradiction is found in 2 Kings 24:8. Jehoiakim was 18 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned in Jerusalem 3 months, when compared to 2 Chronicles 36:9. Jehoiakim was 8 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned 3 months and 10 days in Jerusalem. 2 Samuel 6:23, Michal the daughter of Saul had no child unto the day of her death stands contradictory to 2 Samuel 21:8, which reads, But the king took the 2 sons of Rizpah the daughter of Aiah, whom she bare unto Saul, Armoni, and Mephibosheth, and the 5 sons of Michal the daughter of Saul, whom she brought up for Adriel the son of Barzillai the Meholithite. In the New Standard American Version of 1973, the name Michal, as in 2 Samuel 21:8, which appears in both King James Version and the New World Translation of Jehovah's Witnesses, was replaced by Mirab to conceal the contradiction. Addressing the issue of seeing God as stated in both the Old and New Testaments, John 1:18 tells us, No man hath seen God at any time. This is also confirmed by 1 John 4:12. However, Genesis 32:30 tells a different story, and Jacob called the name of the place Peniel. For I have seen God face to face, and my life is preserved. Strangely enough, this is also confirmed by Exodus 33:11. And the Lord spoke unto Moses face to face, as a man speaketh unto his friend. And in Exodus 24:9-11, we are told, Then went up Moses, and Aaron. Also they saw God, and did eat and drink. We also find in John 3:13, And no man hath ascended up to heaven, but he that came down from heaven, even the Son of Man which is in heaven. This again contradicts Genesis 5:24, which states, And Enoch walked with God, and he was not, for God took him, as well as 2 Kings 2:1. And it came to pass, when the Lord would take up Elijah into heaven by whirlwind. Thus, was it only Christ who was taken up to heaven, or Enoch and Elijah as well? Additionally, there are numerous conflicting versions of the Old Testament Hebrew, Greek, Sumerian, etc., whose authors are in many cases unknown to biblical authorities. The same situation applies to the great majority of authors and editors of the books of the Bible, who are presumed to be God's representatives by their people and were also anonymous. According to the French version, Islam's position relative to the Bible is one of fairness and unbiased judgment. It views the Bible as clearly a book that contains some truth, however. Some falsehood has tainted its noble origin. The Islamic criteria for distinguishing truth from falsehood are the Quran and teachings of the Prophet Muhammad. In simple terms, whatever contents of the Bible that are in agreement with the Quran and Sunnah are acceptable, and what is in disagreement is rejected. Other statements in it are not to be either believed or discredited. As for the original scriptures that God revealed to his prophets, Abraham, Moses, David, Jesus and others, firm belief in them is among the pillars of faith without which one cannot be a Muslim.